I'm going to be taping, so go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Adrian Meyers. I'm from South Africa, and really it's a privilege for me to be speaking with you all live. Mike, please don't hesitate if I go in the wrong directions with my lecture. I try to stay on track.
Okay.
I wasn't sure that, hang on, I think I got it now. To record on my side, I need permission from you, but I suppose if you record, that'll be fine.
Right, I'll record it and I'll send you guys a copy.
Right. Let me start by assuming that all you guys would like to be lawyers or judges or prosecutors one day.
Yeah. You're probably looking at some, we have a little mini courtroom in our classroom, and he's showing you a little bit right there. We have 3 or 4 of our students would like to do that, yes.
Will it be a two-way lecture, or shall I give the lecture and then allow questions, or would you like
Go ahead and do the lecture, and then we'll interrupt with questions later on.
Mike,
I think
Yes.
if your students use your camera, what they express is going to be listened clearly.
Right.
Your microphone worked in a wonderful way.
Yeah, I had to turn their mic off because it gives it an echo. So they don't have, you're not going to hear them right now. So I'll have to change that.
Okay. I understand. You need to turn off your. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Adrian.
like I said, I'm very privileged. I've never spoken to so many aspirant lawyers and judges from other countries. Because we are going to look at a South African case, I would like to give you a little background as to the South African legal system as it pertains to race, and also from my side, from our side, many lessons I've learned. If you tackle a case like that, which will probably end in a constitutional court, of course in moot mock atmosphere or surroundings, but the unique case that Mike and Ben have set up, the fact that we look at a real scenario which is problematic and that will have future repercussions, and how do you handle that? If you go through the documents I've sent you, the approach I want you to take in this case is to see the future to a point where you as lawyers will present your case in the Constitutional Court. At that time, it will be expected of you to have appropriate skills, perceptions about court work, your subject, your experience, the attributes that you should have in terms of your attitude, and also then the knowledge, and then the social aspect of how do you interact with the judges, with the other parties. All those you cannot learn at university. You learn theory at university, but this case is exceptional. And I must compliment Ben and Mike in the way they set it up. Now, this specific case is about race. Race is huge in many countries. In South Africa, it is very big. It affects all walks of life, all professions, so it's part of life. I had the opportunity of working with people in Uganda. Their race is not serious a problem. They don't have it. But race in my book, and I'll get to that later on, is a manufactured situation. How can you rate people in races where there's no scientific basis for them being classified in races and to color code them. It's like when you paint a house, you decide that wall must be white, that wall must be black. So this whole situation, you have to handle it in court. So I've put together a very basic, Mike, they have that one document, you send it to them, the
Right.
first one. Now I'll go, because you have it and you'll go through it, let me explain the context basically for you. And like I said, this is a brilliant opportunity for you to test yourself in a moot court surroundings, but in real cases. And I must tell you that if you study at university, you learn stuff, very important stuff. But 80% of the stuff you don't use when you practice law in various criminal cases or civil cases or other types of cases. But again, our constitutional court in the subject of race is extremely complicated. And if you do a case about that in South Africa, I'd like to give you a running start. So the first document, I've given you various tips and hints. I'd like to quote from one paragraph on the page 2 of my PowerPoint. You must know for sure, your future real-time courtroom will be very competitive. And you will meet very strong opposition there in terms of lawyers. You will find sometimes that judges can be very difficult. And only the strongest legal minds will survive. And if you're successful, I had the privilege of studying at university. I was the first generation of Afrikaans-speaking, my family, to go to university. And it was a privilege for me. But the secret of the success for you is to learn the theory. I worked, at that time I was working for the first period, as part of the South African version of the Drug Enforcement Agency that was in Narcotics Bureau. I worked during the day, I worked many nights, I went to night classes. On Saturdays I wrote exams, and many Sundays I worked. And I got to court many times. And I was able to put as a policeman, as a witness, giving evidence to the judges. And in many cases, the lawyers, the defense attorneys, they had no theory of practice, and they lost it. And for instance, our judges' rules was recorded in a book by Judge Hinstra. We had to learn it because we expected that every time they're going to ask us about it. And when you work with that and you know that, you can be sure. So a few tips I've given you there, but it's very important to realize that in this case, it's not an ordinary case. You must prepare well. Your evidence must be good. So what I did, I sent you this introduction, then I sent you a PowerPoint. It was quite a long one. I call it snapshots from the edge of sanity. Now, why I chose that term is this case is insane in South Africa, where you get so many aspects of it, so many dimensions of it. It was very difficult to concise it, but going through all those postcards I sent you, you as a lawyer working through your investigators' cases will have to pick out evidence. So it's a multi-dimensional presentation I've made for you. So I sent you a lot of postcards from the edge of sanity. And sometimes you feel like when you get involved with this and you see the worst you get from the extreme racism to the more cool, everyday part where people talk on social media, you have to work that out. But I think this is a very, very enjoyable case. And the one point I want to make before I get to the content part, imagine yourself in a moot court that you're presenting a case to the Constitutional Court. Now, there are very important, very relevant standards that they expect from you to present your case. Your case itself will have to be of a very high standard. Our judge, Chief Judge Mogoeng, is a brilliant man. I've watched many of his cases. I read many of his cases. And I sent you 2 cases, I believe, Mike, where he rendered a verdict. He's brilliant. So let me start by asking you 2 questions, rhetorical questions. You know a lawyer defending or a lawyer attacking the point of view in this case. So here it is very much about what is racism, because I see racism as like a mothership, and there's a lot of small boats going in all directions. But if you understand race, then you get to the crux of this whole case. What is race? Why does it exist? How did it come to exist? And I'll give you a very brief explanation of what happened in South Africa. South Africa, many of the peoples, and you must pardon me if I use the term black or white people, because it's not in I don't use it, but for this instance, watching the election procedures in America, they always saw black people and coloreds and Hispanics, so we can't do it. But for this case, let me go. The black people and white people converged in the Cape Province, in Cape Town area. There were local people, they call them the Sun people, or another name is the Bushmen, or there are other names as well, which I don't want to use, derogative names. The black people tracked down, and the Portuguese people set up a trade station there in the 1600s, 1500s. Then the British, the Netherlands sent Jan van Riebeeck. He set up a trade station there in Cape Town. That was the first roots of the city of Cape Town. And they dealt a lot with the black peoples, the local black peoples. And then the British came and they took that part of the country by force. They colonized it. So they introduced English as a language, but they also introduced the concept of, at the time it wasn't called race, but it was, they call it indigenous people. They call it in their term the naturelle, the natural indigenous peoples. Then came, they brought, it is a very ugly name, but I have to use it, otherwise you won't understand. They started using the term Kafir for black people, because Jan van Riebeeck set up a fence between the white people and the indigenous people. They were not black; they were they were colored in that term. And Jan van Riebeeck set up a fence, and that was the first concept of apartheid. You all know the word apartheid. A Dutch sailor could not marry; he wasn't allowed to marry. Now, they called them the Hottentotte, the Hottentot people, the local people. They called them they couldn't marry unless the Hottentot people adopted the Christian faith. So that was the first apartheid. When the British came, they set up barriers, and the white people tracked my ancestors. My ancestors landed in Cape Town in 1680. My great-great-great-grandfather was a German guy, and my great-great-great-grandmother was a Dutch lady. And that's, I'm the 9th generation. So then it developed, then you had the Anglo-Boer War in 1899, where the British had a war against the various other Indian provinces, where it was all occupied by white people and the black people. And at that time, the relationship between the blacks and the whites were not as bad, but Then the British came and they set up various types of fences, moral fences and religious fences and all that. And my two grandfathers both fought against the British in the Boer War of 1899 to 1902. After the war, they were still teenagers. They ran away from school, stole horses, stole Mauser rifles, and they went to war. They lost everything. Fast forward 1913, the British were in charge. They promulgated the Lands Act in 1913, setting straight rules for black people cannot own land and related stuff. So we go 1948, the South Africans voted and they set up a republic, which is not a British colony anymore. And now fast forward to 1994, this is the Nelson Mandela presidency. And in my book, that was the best time in 300 years for South Africa. Non-racialism was the key word. And his personal vision was that, one, everybody is equal, and two, children, look after your children, look at their future. And that is the vision that I have. And that's why I'm sitting here today talking with you. Now, unfortunately, there were a couple of bad things happening. But getting back to our constitution is regarded as one of the constitutions that provide the highest level of freedom to people, politically, etc. But unfortunately, the Constitution states clearly we are a non-racial country. But a little bit later on, they say there are races. Now, the one rhetorical question I want to ask you, if you talk about non-racial, to me it means there are no races. But later on, they talk about races. So this is the institutional introduction of race in our constitution. Now, later on, with subsequent and other acts of lower rank, like the Equality Act, in terms of which you go to court to have the court hear your race case, or race-based case, and then the Employment Equity Act, where the lawmakers, they, of course, were the majority ANC people, they said South Africans are classified as black, but they don't mention white. Then black, they define as black, colored, and Indian. So it's been a mess. And since that time, you look at my postcards I've sent you. Getting back to two very important points. And I think that then I will stop and ask, maybe some of you want to ask questions, or Mike, you can give me a comment. The crux of this case is, if you look at science, the science of genetics, the science of taxonomy, there's no legal ground for the Homo sapiens sapiens. We are all members of the Homo sapiens subspecies. There's no evidence, scientific, that we are a sub-race in the various colors. Like I said, color-coded. There's no scientific evidence. It's a man-made argument, attribute. When I mentioned to you those in the beginning, those attributes that you need to have, one of them is attitude. The attitude of the people in the parliament that time, they pushed through this act, and now it's the law. But there's no scientific evidence at all. You can look at many sciences. So the question to you is our constitution's stipulation or imperative that there are races, is it consistent with science, my answer to you is, no, it's not. But this is the first argument. The second argument is, yes, it is. Because racist, but like I said, there's no foundation. Okay, let's leave it there. Secondly, now you go to our constitution. My question is, and you need to have a look at it. I'm not criticizing, I'm putting it to you, like I'm putting my case to the judge now. I'm talking to the judge, you're the judge, that's why I'm doing it this way. I'll say to the judge, the South African stipulation in the constitution, here, non-racial, their race, is inconsistent. It's a contradictory in terminis. You can't be non-racial and racial. Now, build on that. You have the various other acts. The Employment Equity Act that stipulated we are blacks, but silent about, so the blacks. Study that, you will study that act and study it well. So out of that, I'm asking you, if it's an unlawful stipulation in the act, it can't be unlawful because the law states that, but from a perspective of genetics, and study genetics, you have approximately 22,000 genes in your body. And go and look how many of those genes determine your skin color. It's such a small part of the 22,000. It is not enough to classify you in various races. So question is the determination that we are racist, is it lawful or just unscientific? I'm putting it to the court that it's unlawful. So it's not based on fact. It's not based on logics. So you have a stipulation. It's a metaphor to say that a person is white or black or colored. And the ridiculous, absolute ridiculous stipulation in our old laws in the 1800s, 1900s, in a small town in our eastern border, it's Komatipoort. An Indian person was not allowed to walk on the sidewalk. They had to walk on the street. And the Free State province, Indian people couldn't sleep there. They had to drive through. Now, isn't that unlawful in terms of the present constitution, but stating that you have races? So how do you complete a circle? You can't. So I'm asking you, if you do this case, investigate whether all these stipulations, and one of the things you'll be looking at is affirmative action. Affirmative action is one of the small rowboats of the mothership. And today it's tearing this country apart totally. And jobs are reserved for black people, but all black people. In the politics of the country, only certain black people are getting the jobs and the money and the tenders. It's a very complicated, very sensitive, but my suggestion to you is look at this case from a point of view that there is no evidence that races can exist. And that is the basis of the argument that I would like you to make when we've done all the cases, combine them together, put them to our parliament. You can do that. There's a section that allows you to do that. And also write to our chief judge. He's a brilliant man and he will listen. If we can set up through this whole case, one case, many cases, one case where we can convince the Constitutional Court and Parliament that this, I call it unlawful classification in races. It is to me a bad metaphor. You can't do that. But I looked into it more deeply than many other people. So I mentioned to Mike, I have more than 10,000 exhibits, and on my phone there's 5,000 screenshots. I read all the newspapers all across the world, the ones that I can understand, and I'm convinced that, and that's my bottom line. But you have to get there. This is the level that you have to get to the Supreme. If you want to put this argument to the judges, the Constitutional Court and Parliament and other organizations, one of the human rights organizations in the world recognizes that there's no ground for classifying people in terms of race. I can't remember if it's the Commonwealth Human Rights, International Human Rights. I don't, but you will find it there. That argument, if we can put that argument and we can succeed, imagine what you've achieved. You will have opposition along the way, but you have to prepare for that level. And I'm sure the framework that Mike and Ben have created can allow you to do that. I'll help you with the knowledge. You created the context and your own research. It's a wonderful experience to start researching all this. But my point is, if we can convince, and that's my last note to you, if we can convince one of these international human rights bodies, specifically our parliament, but they will put up a heavy fight, I'm telling you. And Judge Mogoeng, which I respect very much, he's really brilliant. He will listen, the judges will listen. If we can convince them to change one of these bodies' preambles or constitutions, and then put an imperative in that you can't classify people in terms of a skin color. Then we get to the question, that's South Africa, and I have many postcards. The one person uses the K word to swear at the person in a supermarket. She goes to jail for 6 months. That was a white person. The evidence is there. A black person goes on social media and he says, all white people must be killed. Nothing happens with him. Where is the consistency? And it's such a complicated situation. But getting back and summarize my last point, you can prove through evidence that there's no race classification that's valid. If you can do that, you'll have a ripple effect. That's a domino case that will start all the others falling. And I'm telling you, if we can do that, it's the first time. Now I want to refer to people like Nelson Mandela, Bishop Tutu, and Albert Luthuli. They received Nobel Peace Prizes, and they couldn't. They stopped apartheid through 3 or 4 generations. But the cause of apartheid, the cause of racism, they could not remove. But don't tell me I'm anything, but I can assure you that I was born in the situation, I'm now in the situation, and you've got this golden opportunity that's created by global schools to really change it. And if you can change that, you'll have a ripple effect across the world. And then this Moot Court will set an international benchmark because it's groundbreaking. It's amazing. It's innovative. Then you will have set a very high bar, benchmark, not only for us in South Africa, but in all your own countries. And I think I've said a lot of stuff, but I think I've covered the context, and I haven't covered the content yet, but I think that if you go through the postcards I've sent you, and I included a confidential report. It's a Moot situation. So this is how these courts are done. All kinds of stuff like this will have in evidence, but I leave it to Mike and Ben to sort that out.
Yeah, thank you so much. I got a cough drop in my mouth. That was wonderful. What did you think, Enrique?
I think that my friend Adrian has given a deep concept as a native from South Africa. He has experienced what is the problem with the apartheid situation, how South Africa has overcome it. And it's a real good example on how to learn how to solve this kind of difference in countries with racism. It's a very vertical. I appreciate a lot what Mr. Mayor have said. He says it with a lot of enthusiasm. I would like to listen to your students there, Michael.
Yeah, we're in the middle of class change, so
I know.
I'm going to talk to them in just a moment when they come back in.
No,
But what I've done is let me show Adrian what I've done. We'll go through real quick.
your microphone is muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Our internet is very unstable here. We may have a blackout somewhere. Well, I think my screen just went dead. I don't know. I can't see you anymore. I don't know if you can hear me, but I think we have a blackout now. I'm not sure, but.
Are you seeing my laptop? Can you see the case material? Enrique?
I can see what you've done, Mike. I'm just mentioning it. I just got a note here that our internet is unstable and it may go down any moment. So let's go until it goes down.
Okay, good. Well, I put down here, I just put a Google slide on top here.
Mike, turn on your microphone, please.
Okay, sorry.
Your microphone is muted.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. There you go. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. And it got my echo going, so. This is the Google Slides on
Racism.
and this is what he was talking about. So all the students would be able to get this and download it. But this is his presentation that he was talking about, and it goes through and it has 40 or 50 slides in this one, and it's got quite a few good ones. And then going back to the case again, this is the postcard one. Oops, sorry, somehow or another I don't have it in there, but I'll double check why that's not working. And then we have the case itself. Something not working about that one either, so we'll try to find out why.
Let's wait.
Okay, well, I don't want to waste any Adrian's valuable time. I'll do it. And then this one here, what's something there with that one too? I'll try to figure out what's going on. This is a link to the case, the promotion of equality, prevention of unfair discrimination. And what Adrian was saying is exactly true. These acts are actually against the certain parts of the South African Constitution because you can't show preferential treatment if you have no races. So when they say they're non-racial and come back and say they're racial, it's the same kind of a glitch they had in the United States Constitution when we passed our 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, but then never really had any teeth to it. And then we had to pass the Civil Rights amendments 100 years later. So on the side of defending Peter, we would have to try to bring that point out. And I guess on the side of trying to defend the University of Pretoria, they're going to have to use the old idea that they were just following the law or whatever.
Michael, South Africa and its constitution has made outstanding treatment about discrimination,
Right.
racism, all that stuff because they have suffered that problem. But compare, I know that it's not convenient to compare, but compare with the U.S. Constitution, there are any similarity. The South African country has a idea and a more advanced idea about discrimination, or they both are the same?
Oh, no, it's entirely backwards. They took affirmative action. Affirmative action was to try to help the minorities get a leg up to get on the majority. If you put it the opposite way, and I think that's Adrian's hinting at, if you put the affirmative action in the majority's hand, that's just going to lead to tyranny. And tyranny of one color is the same as tyranny. You can't replace one tyranny with another tyranny and say it's not tyranny. That's really, really bad. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, in a case that dealt with the University of Michigan back in 2000, said that, one day that we wouldn't need affirmative action here in the United States. Martin Luther King Jr. in September 1963, in his I Had a Dream speech, said that we shouldn't judge people by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. You cannot just go ahead and say, that's one thing that Adrian was pointing out was so well. Nelson Mandela, just like Martin Luther King Jr., was trying to judge people not by color of skin necessarily, but by what they could do and what they can't do. When you go back to color of skin, you have a really problem, because basically many of us are much more complicated than what we look like. And then to say that somebody who's from India is colored is kind of crazy. And some of the laws and stuff were really bad. I'm not trying to defend that, but to make another law to be equally as bad doesn't make any sense.
Adrian,
It's
please.
arguing that point.
Can I say something, please?
Yeah.
One of the that I didn't mention is all the students need to look at this following aspect. If you define a crime, it's a South African law, maybe or probably all over. You define theft, murder, rape. The definitions in various acts of the common law. But in the case of racism, which is a crime here, there's no definition at all.
No, not right now. I can leave it now. I need to leave it now.
Go ahead, Adrian.
Yeah,
Adrian.
I'll get the website to work, but anyways, we're going to have everybody sign into Google Classroom, and then they can download the stuff and then we're going to have, they're going to put together racism in their country. Adrian, earlier today, we had people in Taiwan give their racism, one which was really kind of neat. We have some people in Lebanon going to do theirs, but the Lebanese people, the lady apologized because they just canceled school this week because of the coronavirus, and they won't be back to March the 10th. The people in India had stuff prepared, but they couldn't stay that late, so they want us to tape this and send this to them, and they will they'll go live on the days that we do the courtrooms.
Okay.
And people from Turkey will do the same thing.
I want to make this question to both of you. Racism can be defeated only by education and integration.
What? Adrian, what do you think?
I have one of my pieces of evidence I haven't converted to a postcard yet is that the heading is courts can't heal South Africa's racial rift. And it's true what Enrique said, but I just want to ask you, did you get my note very recently where I said that one thing I left out is that there's no, racism is a crime, but there's no definition of this as a crime. So that's why I'm arguing you can't use race, you can't classify racism as crime if there's no classification.
Right.
But Enrique is right. But getting to the schools, this case, students the chance not just to read about it or to listen and watch TV. This case is putting the case to all the people. Any school in the world can have a look at it and they can decide if there's racism, how they want to deal with it. But in basic cases, courts can't do it. But the law, if the law states there's racism, not even the classroom can help.
You know, one thing you said, Enrique, earlier about, you know, you take the U.S., for example, after the Civil War and after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated on April 14th of 1865, and he dies early in the morning of April 15th of 1865, they passed a bunch of laws to help amendments to help give African-American people their rights. They're called our 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. But what they forgot to do was to pass any kind of penalties, so if they got denied the rights, they would have some recourse. And then we had to wait almost 100 years before they put laws to an effect. That's when we ended up implementing Jim Crow laws, where they separated, very similar to apartheid and other things like that, only because even if it was against the law, but then it had to go through the court system. And we had a court case in 1896 about, on the railroad, and then finally Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas, in 1954, excuse me, in May, that actually settled the case of integration, in which we had to, a little girl was being bused 20 miles to go to a black school, and she had a white school down the street, and she wanted to go to the white school. Some of this stuff is unbelievable, but it is against the law, and sometimes it takes a very strong case to try to get people to change their mind. So what Adrian's trying to say is that, you know, this could be like one of those type of things to help people understand it much better.
Now that we have a lot of resources to get connected and exchange ideas, why so many countries, even in Chile, Argentina, and Brazil, there are neo-Nazi groups growing up?
Yeah. It's always going to be blowback at some point. The funny thing about racism or being inclusive is that you're going to have to give all people rights, whether you like the people or not. And the one thing about free speech is you're going to have people that you may not like their speech, but they have the right to say it. It's when you start denying certain people and certain groups just for crazy reasons that you end up with this really strong problem. You know, I know that sounds weird, but in a free society, you're going to have to be able to allow people to express, even if they have to go against what you think is right.
But I think that people like you and Adrian are going to prevail because you exchange in a real good way your position and your ideas that can convince everybody to assume that racism is something that is going to disappear. Maybe it will take a lot of time, but maybe it is also something that belongs to our animal conception. I don't know, but it's something that we have inherited in a cultural way. I am very proud. My ancestors are from have come from Africa too. My father has a link with Spanish ancestors. I love to be a dark man, someone who has the proud of being black. But I know that even black people behave in a racist way sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Not only on the white people that idea, that
Right.
concept.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's one thing we try to do with the study. You see that Asian people can be racist, white people can be racist, black people can be racist. Racism can go in any kind of culture, and everybody has some sort of a deal. We were talking earlier this morning from the school in Taiwan, and they were talking about the Japanese and the treatment, because Japan had controlled Taiwan for many years before the nationalists came. And there was a lot of, and you go into Korea and talk about Japan, there was a tremendous amount, and that was Asian against Asian, but there was tremendous amount of hard feelings because there was some really bad treatment of people.
The best of all this is that you take the concept of racism in another level, because even in some Asian countries, there are a lot of racism, because you say something that is true. The Chinese consider different than Japanese, the people from Vietnam, the people from Singapore, even in people who come from Asia, they suffer among them the same concept of racism. Am I right?
Yeah. And one of the biggest things we talked about earlier, you and I, in the 1932-33 winter, Stalin basically ended up killing between 7 and 12 million Ukrainians. Stalin is actually from Georgia. He's not Russian. The Ukrainians that passed away. And then in 1954, Khrushchev repopulated much of eastern Ukraine with Russians because there wasn't anybody living there, because the Russians already killed the people back in the Holodomor. So, when you take a look at some of the stuff, people are just really cruel against other human beings. And I think if we started looking at everybody as being a human being, we'd be a lot better off. I think that's what Adrian was trying to say. Isn't it right, Adrian?
Absolutely.
Adrian, let me ask you something. Do you consider that now that we have the instant communication by using all of the devices that technology put at our reach, I want to know that if this kind of programs, I am absolutely confident that you develop this kind of video conferences, and you try to amplify the concept of global citizenship. It will decrease some, in one way or another, the level of acceptance if you are from a different culture. Technology is helping a lot of this point, because it does not create a division between us. It joins us, and now the global concept is becoming stronger. Am I right?
Totally. I just want to refer you to one of the things I've said, and I'm saying it because I want to support you in what you're saying now. Previously, I worked with the University of South Africa, where they had a moot court that was for law students at university. And I've never read about any simulated scenario like we're doing with moot court, trying to fix a real problem. If we can define a problem, that's what I've been saying, we can do it if you've got the facts behind you. And I've won difficult cases in court that seem to be, you can't win it because I had the facts. If you've got the facts, and that's why I'm saying we can do it. And getting back to also what I said, this moot court program, that's my perception, can break this whole thing down and start a new narrative where we say, okay, what is the non-racial and what is the racism? Like you said, we can do it. If we've got the facts, and we do have the facts. And one strong point is if countries from 30, 40 schools, sorry, schools from 20 to 30 countries can together make a statement to the United Nations and the Commonwealth, South African, listen, what we can achieve actually is break all this cloudy situation up into defined aspects and then handle it. But I think we're on the right track to do it.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, the main problem is going to be I had like 23 people that were supposed to be on today, and we were able to communicate with maybe 5 of them. I'm hoping that we should get at least 20 different countries involved, and then start working on this project and probably try to start out. I'm looking at a April 15th to where we can maybe start. Hopefully have the briefs in. I got an example of what the briefs look like. I made a template so the English foreign language teachers would know what to add. So we're going to try to look at it as a year process. We're going to do a court case in the fall about water. We're going to do a court case about genocide, which would be very similar to this in the spring next year. And whatever the people will do on this, and we want to continue this with some of the kids, and we'd love to be able to get that to the right hands to actually make some real change. Because a lot of this time you just talk about change and nothing really happens. It would be really nice to actually give something to a product to Adrian that he could use with and maybe try to see if they could make some changes. There's definitely need some changes.
Michael, you have an international point of view about this concept because you deal with many different institutions all over the world. You consider that now we are open to accept the difference, to know who is in front of me, even though we share a different culture, but the leitmotif is my interest, my curiosity. Now people are committed to accept the difference in order to create a better world, or things have become more difficult than before?
I don't know, Enrique, you brought some good points. With a thing like coronavirus, wherever it started or whatever, it causes people to work together. Even under different political systems, it causes people to work together. If we could actually get young kids and see that there's no difference between most people of a certain age anyways, and just get them to communicating with each other, I think you would end up with a lot better world. Much of our problems have been manufactured, and we listen to the media, we listen to whatever. I can go back from my personal relationship. I think I've been working with some schools in Iran for 15 years. If I just listened to every day from the news, you would think Iran was really, really a scary place and stuff like this. But the people I've talked to in Iran were just as nice as any people. In fact, some of their students, I would love to be able to teach them. They were excellent students, and I never saw anybody that hated America or anything like that. But there's an awful lot of hate being taught. Adrian's got some vivid pictures that we're probably going to use for next year's deal, that you could actually see the results of this stuff. This stuff is real. People are dying, and the real bad part about it is if you wait to the history books, everybody will be history, because these problems will be gone because the people will be gone. We don't want to. We want to try to stop something before the people are gone.
But the real problem is that we need to face a big situation in order to join together, to be together.
Oh, yeah.
If a meteorite is going to impact Earth, we are going to be together how to solve this problem. And if an earthquake is more successful than uh, 1,000 preachers to believe in God.
Oh yeah.
We have that behavior. I want to listen the point of view of Mr. Mayer.
Summarizing it from my point, looking at it from outside inward, we made a very good start. Michael created a platform, a framework, context, and if we can all put content in, let the kids analyze it, work together, and get a product. One summarized thing. I mentioned, Mike, that I'm also writing a book on this, and this court case has changed the format of the book totally, because I wanted to have one chapter on it, but now it has changed to the theme through this book is how we can get the youth. We living in our world, they live in our world, their world still coming. If we can help them, I am positive that we will succeed, and then we will get many of these attachments falling off, and we get to the message that if we can get the message through to the whole world, like Enrique said, the whole world, if the world will see it as, in my interpretation, there's no races, but we one species in the world, then why can't we succeed? Is my answer. We've got all the resources, we've got brilliant students. Between the three of us, already we made a very good start, and I can judge from where I sit. I can assure you that we've made a very assertive start, and it's our achievement to lose. And again, getting back to this framework, Michael, that you set up, it's from my point of view here in South Africa, where you get things every day, you live with it. We've made a very solid start.
I know. Michael, do you think that people who promote racist behavior, they are ignorant, or they are only bad people, or they are the mixing of both of them?
I think that, let me give you my point of view. But let me use an example. We had a guy in our country, his name was Eugene Tarablanche. He was very, very, very conservative. He was right-wing. He led the Afrikaner Weerstandbeweging. They are very conservative, but he was a brilliant man. He read Shakespeare and he studied Hitler. I met him several occasions, and he is such a very assertive speaker. The key here is, if we can reach people with lesser cognitivity that we have, because this has got nothing to do with intelligence, it's cognitivity. If we can capture a concept and we can take it to these people, very few people will not understand it. And I refer you back to what I said in the beginning, one of the attributes that these young people must develop. You must have perception, you must have perspective, you've got the right attitude, and we can bring it. If Eugene Tarablanche, he was actually one of the farm murderers in the past. He was very brutally killed on his farm in the western part of our country under very strange circumstances. But the point is, brilliant speakers can convince people. And I've spoken with you, I've spoken with Mike quite a few times over the years. And I am positive that we could get a message and the youth will carry it through. And this, if we can get this project built up to a climax, where we go to the United Nations, the Commonwealth, South African Parliament, and if you succeed there, Mike, we are 50% there now. Although they're not all the schools, but they will come. They will come. They may have viruses and stuff, but I'm not arrogant, but I believe that this is something achievement that we have in our hands, ours to lose.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think people are ignorant. I just think they may, at a very young age, they may have gotten into some things and they believe differently than people. And I think that's probably because of school systems and other things. I think most of our hatred is taught. You know, that's what's really kind of bad. If we can break that chain of hatred by re-educating people and educating them at an early age, then we stop a lot of the problems.
Yeah.
I can mention many examples to you where people I've met, and I must give you one example. I met a guy who was a communist guerrilla. He fought against this regime, but he was influenced and he went outside the country for training. His first assignment was to go kill his father and mother because they were not believers in communism. He actually had a second instruction, and that was once they killed, there's a funeral, all the family were there, kill them all. And he was stopped. And he changed his mind totally when he realized that that's a wrong perception. It can be done. If we can wash clean those cloudy stuff, and don't underestimate primary school children. They talk about it a lot. They read social media. This year they pick stuff up. I've sent you, Mike, and you, Enrique, and the others, a lot of examples of what's happening on the social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to you, those are the postcards I sent you. Sometimes not very comprehensive, but it's impossible to classify them all. And that's what I said. And Enrique, you're asking valid questions. I see where you come from. But I've worked with Michael many years, and he's a reference to the Iran people. I was a judge once, many years ago, in a case where an American school defended a so-called killer, and the prosecutors were Iranian girls from a girls' school in Iran. We were all together doing it. There's no politics, stuff like that. And again, getting back to, and I don't do this drum all the time, but where I sit, I judge over many years what I've seen, what I've experienced, and I can see that medicine has started to have an effect. Just the fact that we're here and we're talking like this, we've got the various points of view, and all the leaders of the various schools, if they can work with us, Mike, Enrique, why should we lose this achievement? We've got it in our hands.
Oh yeah, and Enrique, I'd like to ask you a question. What kind of racism do they have in Peru?
Peru is composed by 45% by Indian people, 20% by African descendants, 5% by Asian people from China and Japan, mainly. White people is the rest. The rest is just, but we have learned something very important, that by being different, it's not a matter to be apart from our neighbor. We have become a rich cultural country by accepting our differences.
Right.
We accept if you are a Mormon, behind me there is a Buddhist believer. We are not how can I say, Pascana. We are not the perfect place, but the level of tolerance makes us to live at a certain harmony. We, even though the differences sometimes go in a secret way, But we live even though we are not fully economical and cultural developed country, we have learned that we must be one country that is composed by the influence of many people who has arrived to Peru. The history of the United States is made of. The same time, the same way, I think that South Africa has a lot of values, a lot of things to share with the world because the integration made by Mandela and the effort of many intelligent white citizens had made possible that South Africa lives in a certain level of peacefulness, and at the same time, they give a message to the world that we can make this world a better place to live. That's why I love the emphasis that Adrian put when he explained his ideas. I am very thankful that you can bring this topic to talk, even though I have not a point of view from legal way, because you develop court moot programs that from my point of view it is very interesting to understand that by changing ideas mainly we can arrive to concept that we can tolerate, that we can accept our differences, because we all have come from Africa. The difference of our skins is because of the difference of latitude and the geographical sites that we live, but we are only one human race. We are separated by geographical places, by our family ancestor, our language, our religious beliefs. But basically, we're the same. I think that someday we are going to have a better place to live and accept who we are, even though you speak another language, even though you behave in a different way, even though it needs to be socially accepted. But I love the enthusiasm that you both put in this kind of video conferences, and I am very proud that you share it with me.
Thank you so much. And Adrian, is it right to assume that in '94, when Nelson Mandela and took over the government, the ANC has really gotten a lot different than it was back when Mandela was president?
Yes, you're right. The problem of race reached a climax in '94. Actually, in 1990, when F.W. de Klerk announced that the ANC will be unbanned, the death penalty has been stopped. Then there were 4 years when they started talking with each other, and then in '94 we had this constitution. Now Nelson Mandela looked at the constitution. He was the leader of this country, and he said, "I'm the leader of a non-racial country." Then Thabo Mbeki, things started a little bit of change, but lately, I refer to, with respect to my president that we have now, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, but he called me an invader. How am I an invader? When the leader says, like Mandela, "Look, we're one country, I'm your leader," and he treated me like that. But my present president said, "I'm an invader." The leaders, what they say, people listen to. If we can get our students to put together a strong message to the leaders, not going to all the various countries, but if we can go to the Commonwealth Human Rights Commission and the other, and we can change their concept of this, that to me It's like when you plan an operation, a court case, a military operation, a police operation. You have a plan, strategy, plan A, plan B. And I'm saying, looking at everything, that what we have at the moment is a chance to achieve something. And we can. We've got all the material. We've got the youth out there. And they are awesome. I'm telling you, I work with a lot of senior high school students. They've got cognitivity that I did not have when I was that age. But if we can, don't tell them what to do. Don't tell them what they should have done. But give them something to be part of, and they will succeed. It's not our achievement. It's all of us, the achievement that we can have. We can change the world narrative of race. We are over this reach. We've won. That's my opinion.
The climate change is affecting all of us, not only one race, not only black or white or Chinese or native people from South America. It's affecting all of us. And just by that weather condition, we need to assume that we are only one race, one people who is going to face together this kind of challenges.
Okay, so I guess we're all agreed on, and we'll go ahead and carry on as far as we're going to try to do. Enrique, you think you could get some schools there in South America to join us on this project?
I will share your invitation.
And I will send you, I will work on the links today and to make sure that they all work right. And I will send you that link to go into Google Classroom. That way you can download the stuff. And Adrian, I'll send the same to you so you can send to schools in South Africa and Uganda. And then I'll email, I'm putting this video up on YouTube. I'll send you the link. And then I will go ahead and you can see the other link of the kids that we talked to in racism in Taiwan and the lady in Lebanon. So as we speak, we'll have at least, I hope, at least 20-something countries that will be participating, and we'll begin, just because that coronavirus will probably begin in April. I'm looking for around the 15th for a start date, so I'll send out some more information on that. I'm hoping to get a brief. I actually wrote a template so they could get a brief. So it's, you know, that'll be one thing. So we're trying to train the people on written and oral language. And most of the people will be non-native English speakers, but I don't think that holds anything against them because I've learned the best way to learn the language is to think in that language, and the best way of thinking that language is to argue. And this is probably one of the best things to do. We have Adrian's got some really wonderful PowerPoints. You can take a look at the PowerPoints. You'll understand a lot more what's going on in South Africa after you're looking at it. I was just amazed. And then you have the court case itself, and then I will have a copy of the Constitution along with a couple other things from South Africa in that package of stuff. So the kids will have everything they need to do. The students have everything they need to do on that.
Okay, I agree with you. Count on me. It's been a pleasure to meet Adrian, and I wish him the best, and I want to send my best wishes to his family, and I hope to see you soon. You're my first friend from South Africa. It's an honor to share this video conference with Mr. Cunningham, who is a great teacher and superb human being. And I count on you to put into another level our cartoon character that we are developing with some American schools in order to keep eco-friendly relationship with the seas and oceans.
Yeah.
At the same time, I want you to help me that many schools located all over the world can give us ideas, stories, and empower the soul of the international behavior that we must have with the pollution of our environments. Thanks for your time. It has been a real pleasure to be with each one of you. Michael, I will send you the data
Okay.
of the work that I am developing with American schools.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you, Adrian. It was wonderful as always.
Well, it was honor for me.
Namaste, namaste.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
At 5 o'clock this morning with the people from Taiwan. And we were supposed to have 20-something schools. The problem being, this guy didn't show up until 3 hours later. So I want to try to actually get you guys involved. And it's kind of interesting